So, as I'm listening to your articulation of these challenges and issues and solutions, it makes a lot of sense why you wrote this book, The Sovereigntist Handbook. Can you tell us more about why you finally put pen to paper on that one?
Sure. Well, and I've been active in this since well, I was a lot less gray. I was only 29 when I founded the Alberta Independence Party. I'd been politically active since my early 20s with Reform Party and such. And I'd come to the conclusions that we were hitting a stalemate and we needed something to shake up the, the, the status quo. And independence I saw as the path towards doing it. But I really didn't have a clue what I was doing. We did shake a lot of things up. We did make a lot of noise. We did do a lot of organizing, and over years I did take part in several elections. But what I started seeing now, and as I kind of moved out and I got into the Wild Rose Party and things that were a little more mainstream and learned more. But I'm seeing independence movements, people reaching the same conclusion I did, but they're also making the same mistakes I did. So perhaps it's time to document at least what's already been done. If we're concluding we want to see the same end game, fine. But this book is more instructional almost. It's saying, well, if we're going to promote this concept, if we're going to move it ahead, there's lots of people saying why independence should be an option, but nobody really wrote on how we're going to get there. And that's more what this book is about. It's how to become politically active, everything from getting involved in a local political party if you're going to, or just some of the basic talking points for independence, or even just taking care of yourself. People burn themselves out in politics. They take it too seriously. Take a break now and then. Don't sacrifice the important things like your family for political efforts. And people keep learning that the hard way. Well, there's no sense relearning it. Let's do it right.
Well, I certainly enjoy the book. I recommend it to people, Cory. But one of the things I did like about it is that, again, you focused on more about the how. Can citizens actually make a difference, would be my question then to you, Cory.
Yes, and they most definitely can. I mean, our system is still actually not that bad for people if they want to take part in it. If they will become engaged, if they'll become active, they can very much influence political policy, political directions, and even as something as major as an independence movement. As I note in the book, it's only 2 to 3% of Canadians are even members in a political party.
2 to 3%. That's it. Wow.
That's it. And, once in a while, you'll see a little spike with a leadership race going on or something when heavy sales have happened. But even then, that only brings up to 5-6%. And those memberships tend to expire after the race. So these are the number of people that are actually influencing and controlling the political party who may be in power in your province. So you're actually being governed by a much smaller minority than you think. And it's not that hard to join a party. But you know what? There's no instructions anywhere. How do you join a party? What happens when you join a party? What does a membership entitle you to? What can you do within a party once you're a member? So again, I put that within the book because it can be a bit intimidating for people. They didn't teach you that in school. You go to a meeting, it might seem as if everybody knows what they're doing and you don't, when you're the new guy. Well, here's the basics. It's not that hard, actually. And letting more people know and realize that, yes, you can take part and you can have a very real influence as far as you want to go, whether you want to go as far as being a candidate or just somebody who shows up at meetings and expresses their view to neighbors here and there on what they feel on politics. But there is room to make a difference. And we do have a system that allows you to if you'll take advantage of it.
I think you make a brilliant point, Cory. If you take advantage of it, I think a lot of Canadians would be shocked that such a tiny, tiny number of Canadians actually participate. And for me, it begs the question, have you noticed a trend where it seems like the political forum is dominated by special interests or activist groups? They're funded by who knows whom. It could even be specialty activist foundations out of the United States. Like, I'm thinking of, I could mention a myriad of them, let alone the taxpayers. So are you noticing the rise of, dare I say, fake citizens, people who are protesting all the time? We see them, but they're on the payroll. Is that what you're seeing as well, Cory?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a disproportionate amount, it seems, of noise and visibility of some activist groups. And it's a left and right thing. It's not exclusive to either. And again, if they know how to use the mechanisms of public discourse on how to bring block voting into party functions, things like that, and have an influence. So we're seeing more of it, and we're seeing it on the streets and protests, things such as that. And there's interests that are paying for these things to happen. But if people will get up and get active, they can overpower that. There's still only so much these groups can do.
Okay. But one of the things I was very curious about asking you about, Cory, is the state of Canada in 2024. We've seen a lot of concerns about many policies affecting, frankly, the affordability of people's lives. We've got a declining standard of living. But it strikes me that there seems to be green shoots of renewal happening in our country as people kind of rise up and get involved. And they really want to have a voice in the renewal of this country. I think that the numbers of people involved in the UCP are testimony to that. I also look at, in BC, a fascinating story of how there was a BC Conservative Party that kind of came out of the blue, pardon the pun, and ended up giving the incumbent NDP party a run for its money. And now the NDP will be establishing a bare majority party. And there's other parts of that in the rest of the country as well. So are you seeing that as positive signs that people want to be more involved as part of that populist movement? They don't want to just sit back and let the so-called elites of the country, the so-called special interests of the country run our lives. Are you seeing the same trend?
Most definitely. There's a chafing against I guess you could call it the establishment. And I believe that's what happened with the BC Liberal Party when they were acting as if old party style. They were being very selective on who could run for them. They were taking very middle of the road stances, being mushy. People wanted change. And the Conservatives offered that, and Rustad, really pulled them together. Took a party from what it had 2% support 18 months ago to being right on the edge of actually winning government. And he's got a very strong opposition mandate now, and there's a very humbled NDP sitting in there that realizes that if they want to be more than one term after this, they're going to have to be more pragmatic in their policies. That took ground organization an amazing amount, and people getting up to say, yes, I've had it with the status quo. I want something fresh. And it can be dangerous. Populism, it's funny, we see again, some people spit it out as if it's a bad thing, and it can be. I mean, there's been some populist movements that were reactionary to factors, and people did some terrible, terrible things. I don't see that coming at this point, but we do have to be careful with populism. I mean, if people are all worked up over something, they can embrace some damaging policies in the long run too. You don't want the mob getting together, but I don't see that. I see that as engaged citizens right now. I mean, we didn't see people screaming in the streets or suppressing votes or being, untoward, like I guess the dangerous populist movements of the past. We just saw people getting up and casting their ballots and making a heck of an impact.
Indeed. So is part of this renewal of populism where people want to be much more active, it seems to be, is part of that just, naturally coming out of the management of COVID-19 where you had, amazingly, an incredible clampdown on basic rights and freedoms that we thought we had, even on bodily autonomy of all things. So in the aftermath of that, is that part of the reaction to that?
I think so. For people who chafe under authoritarianism, I mean, that was one of the most horrible periods we've ever seen in Canadian history or world history as far as that goes, modern-wise. We realized just how far government can reach into your life under the justification of public safety. Now,
Indeed.
and people are still debating and still litigating with everything that happened at that time. But I think a lot of people got very uncomfortable and squeamish and realizing just how vulnerable we are in periods like that. I mean, as for myself, I wasn't, I don't have as much problem with the vaccination itself as a lot of people do. But I had some very serious problems with the mandates, with the coercion, with
Indeed.
the
Yes.
pressuring people into that. Likewise with the quarantines. I mean, you were separating families, and we just didn't see a demonstration of the risk that justified the amount of social damage that was caused by that government intrusion into our lives. I'm more inclined to do these things when somebody asks me to do them and reasons with me, rather than when they put the gun to the head and say, yeah, if you have a gathering of more than 4 people, we're going to charge you.
Exactly.
That gets my back up, and that gets people like me to say, well, I'm going to get active and make sure this can't happen again. And that's part of it. Getting back to Premier Kenney, even though he's more of a classical liberal kind of person, he still was of the government that clamped down on people's rights like that, and the members lashed back at him in the worst way, and it knocked himself out of power through it.
But isn't that the punchline, Cory? Is that power a la Lord Acton? Power corrupts, and ultimate power corrupts absolutely. So we desperately need to maintain these traditions and wisdom of checks on power so that there's room for citizens to be active and help shape our country together. Isn't that the point?
Exactly. And we are the check. We are the balance. And we do have the system. Like I said, I rail against the system, but we do have good democratic controls. The people who drafted that Constitution weren't all that bad. It's just out of date in a lot of ways, particularly regionally.
Right
but we
on.
have a lot of ability as citizens, as individuals, to hold our politicians to account and get ourselves government. But we have to do it. And again, the ones who don't feel that we should do it. I mean, another aspect of the pandemic times, think about, one of the things authoritarians, the first things they do if it's a terrible time too, is they shut down the ability to gather in large groups. It would be illegal in East Berlin, to have more than 5 people on the street at the same time after a certain hour, because it's not for public health. It's just they don't want people organizing to pressure against the government. That wasn't the motivation of stopping people, I think, from gathering when it came to COVID, but the fact that they intruded on a right that is so important and precious, people don't realize that right to assembly, that right to gather, again, it should set off alarm bells for a lot more people right now. Like,
absolutely, Cory. Let's be real. It was kind of a crock. If you have people, you could go to the liquor store, you could go to Walmart, but you sure couldn't worship.
No.
How do you square that circle? It's beyond me.
They were pretty darn selective with their enforcement.
No, it's pretty ridiculous. So as we wrap up today's far-ranging discussion, and this has been a great discussion, Cory, what can we as citizens do? What's your top 2 lists that we should be doing as citizens? Job 1.
Job 1, get engaged somewhere. Look around yourself. Just see what you can do, because you know what, it's satisfying. It can be fun. Start small. Join your local community association, or if you're more political, join a constituency association with a party, whether they have a seat or not. Just get involved. Go to a meeting. Take part. It really can be fun. It can be satisfying, and it leads to positive change. The other aspect, I guess, is just getting back to community outside of organized things. The thing I missed, I didn't see in the city that I'm enjoying down here in the rural area. Get out and talk to your neighbors. Don't call bylaw when you got a problem with them.
Right on.
Knock on the door and see if you can reason with them. Sometimes the neighbor's just a jerk and nothing's going to work besides a bylaw. Fair enough. But you know what? Start with the door knock. Don't start with the enforcement. And I think we'll all be a lot better for it.
I'm with you, Cory Morgan. Thanks so much for talking with us today about citizenship in Canada, and all the best.
Oh, thanks. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Without open discussion and debate, you're not thinking, nor are you free. Comment below. We'd love for you to join the conversation.